But speaking of reactions to this ruling, you've had some minor criticism from the right, but on the left, on the gun control side, you really haven't heard anything at all.
Crickets.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? What do you think of that?
Yeah. So usually when there's a ruling like this, like with the mag ban, the assault weapon ban, the ammo background check ban, Gavin Newsom and the attorney general and all the state legislators, they all roll out the red carpet and do a little press release saying, this is endangering our citizens. It's, you're putting everybody at risk by doing this, or it's politically motivated judge. The judge is in the pocket of the NRA.
Yeah, he literally said that about Benitez, right? Different judge, but same idea.
Yeah. And even though the Miller case is by FPC, which is a very different mindset, and the CRPA, while I believe has some connection to the NRA being an affiliate organization, is its own separate entity that gets funding separately.
Right.
So it's this time all we got was nothing from the gun control groups. Gavin Newsom, I don't believe, has commented on it, or I haven't seen him comment on it. And the Attorney General, Rob Bonta, basically gave a non-committal statement, basically saying that he's aware of it, but he did not commit to a challenge to this through an appeal.
Here's exactly what Bonta said.
Okay.
They sent us this press release after the ruling came down. He said, "The fact of the matter is California's gun safety laws save lives, and California's Unsafe Handgun Act is no exception. We will continue to lead efforts to advance and defend California's gun safety laws. As we move forward to determine next steps in this case, Californians should know that this injunction has not gone into effect, and that California's important gun safety requirements related to the Unsafe Handgun Act remain in effect." So yeah, he doesn't commit to filing an appeal, which is, obviously in the immediate aftermath, you'll sometimes get these sort of statements from AGs. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to file an appeal, but complete lack of...
We're coming up on a week.
Yeah, the lack
Monday
of comment is very odd. You don't see anything from Everytown. You don't see anything from Giffords. You don't see anything from Brady, who've commented on basically all of these rulings elsewhere, and you don't see anything from Newsom. So what do you think is going on there?
Yeah, I think this kind of comes back to, I just want to talk about the big picture real quick, is everybody wants to see the NFA go away, and everybody wants to say shall not be infringed and all gun laws go away, right? But the handgun ban in this instance is the small bite that we take that allows us to take a bigger bite later. And I think the gun control groups are kind of looking at this and saying, okay, if we go all out against this and say that this law is like super important and handguns need to be banned in this way, they're kind of coming out against the most societally acceptable type of firearm. And I think they don't think that they will win long term. So it kind of is compartmentalizing this to just California potentially if they don't appeal. Because if this goes to the 9th and has a positive ruling, it could have good impacts on states like Washington that are currently going through an assault weapon ban. Maybe some sort of argument being used here applies to what they're fighting over there. So I think, especially considering that the Ninth Circuit kicked down all the court cases to Benitez with the assault weapon ban and the mag ban and whatnot, I think they kind of knew, the Ninth Circuit knew they wouldn't be able to just easily overturn this and don't want to send it immediately to the Supreme Court after the Supreme Court just issued a very big ruling in Bruin.
Yeah.
So it almost looks like they might be picking their battles. I mean, like, I don't want to do the opposite of fear mongering of like building everyone up to just be crumbling back down if this gets appealed in 2 weeks. But in the past, where it's been a 0% chance the state doesn't appeal, now we kind of have a non-0% chance that the state doesn't appeal, which would basically allow us in 10 days from now for manufacturers to submit firearms to be drop tested and safety tested and then added to the roster if the state doesn't appeal. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good take on it. It's a non-zero chance at this point. I don't think it's guaranteed that they won't appeal because it's hard to look. It's hard to look at the history of California and think that they won't appeal because they always appeal. But
when it's 110% chance in the past of appealing, now we're looking at, oh, maybe it's a 98% chance they appeal.
yeah,
That's, you know,
it is
hey, maybe we're that
fascinating.
2%. Yeah.
Right. And you know, it does make sense from a tactical standpoint, as you explained there. This is probably one of the more novel laws in the gun laws in the country. You know, there are a couple other states that are flirting with microstamping at this point, in New Jersey and Massachusetts.
Yeah,
but,
Massachusetts has a handgun roster, right?
Yeah, there's a couple handgun rosters. None of them are as strict as California's. Maryland has one. Massachusetts has one. Microstamping is being a theoretical technology that not only is not implemented by any American gun company, but not anywhere in the world, which sort of gives you some indication of the practicality of it. But so, yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible that if you're trying to think through it strategically in a post-Bruin landscape, if you're a gun control advocate, you probably don't want to waste all of your resources on the most likely laws to get struck down. And this would seem to be one of the most likely. Probably should have been struck down after Heller, frankly, for the reasons we discussed earlier. But so you might want to compartmentalize this one away and, you know, not worry too much about, well, all right, we lost on this point, at least these 3 points. Cause as you mentioned, there are still some parts of this law that were not challenged. Actually, just real quick, why did you guys decide not to challenge the drop testing and the independent laboratory tests?
I think a big strategy of it was, I think we knew that we could win certain aspects of it. And I think a big part of it at the time might have had something to do with the California fee shifting bill that was passed. And basically what that is let's say you argue 9 things and you win 8 of them, but you lose one of them. The state would be able to go after you for attorney fees for everything to do with it. So we wanted to kind of narrow this down. And
interesting. So that had an effect on your thinking.
Possibly, you know, at least in my mind, because I'm thinking, but the legal team decided to do it for a variety of reasons, I'm sure. But a big part of it is you got to fight the battles that you can win one step at a time. So eventually we'll get to a point where the NFA goes away. You know, maybe not in my lifetime. Who knows? You know, let's see. Like, we'll see how it goes 20 years down the road. But this was just a much more palatable thing to try to fight right now, and it's showing that we were able to get this win where we could. And you know, if we get it to a point where any manufacturer could just add a gun to the roster, they will, because manufacturers were willing at the time for limited models to add loaded chamber indicators and magazine disconnects and still manufacture Gen 3 Glocks.
Sure.
So if
they want access to that market for sure.
Yeah. Let's, you know, there's 40 million people in this state. Let's say 30% of them own guns. I think that's about the stat. If 1% of that buys a $600 Glock, it's a big market. And think about how many manufacturers have no access to the California market outside of law enforcement.